The vast crystalline dome of Zephyria Prime sparkled under twin suns as beings from across the galaxy gathered for what they considered a routine meeting. The Galactic Council had seen thousands of primitive worlds, and today's discussion seemed no different from countless others that had come before. Commander Vexstar stood at the center of the chamber, his forearms manipulating holographic controls with practiced ease. The Kethfer had been exploring space when most species were still crawling in mud, and his voice carried the weight of ancient authority as he addressed the assembled representatives. "Council members," he began, his words translated instantly into dozens of languages and thought patterns, "we present for classification another backward world discovered on the galaxy's edge." The hologram shimmered to life, revealing a small blue-green planet spinning slowly in the darkness of space. Around the circular chamber, representatives from 12 advanced civilizations turned their attention to the display. Tall beings whose bodies seemed to be made of flowing liquid metal analyzed the planet's energy signatures with sensors built into their flesh. The Zephyrians, creatures of living crystal, whose thoughts moved at the speed of light, processed vast amounts of data in microseconds. "The world calls itself Earth," Vexstar continued, unable to keep the mockery from his voice. "It contains 7 billion primitive life forms that refer to themselves as humans. Our scans show technology levels that would have been outdated in our civilizations 50,000 years ago." The hologram zoomed closer, showing cities with crude buildings made of metal and stone, vehicles that moved using controlled explosions, and primitive aircraft that required physical wings to fly. Two beings who could reshape matter with thought and travel between stars in the blink of an eye. It was almost pitifully backward. Representative Kalthex of the Varanian Collective leaned forward, her liquid metal form rippling with interest. "What energy manipulation abilities do they possess? Surely any species capable of basic space travel has developed some form of stellar engineering or quantum manipulation." Vexstar's four eyes gleamed with amusement. "None whatsoever. They burn chemical fuels for energy. Their weapons fire small metal projectiles using explosive charges. They communicate by sending electromagnetic waves through space at the speed of light." He paused, letting the primitive nature of these technologies sink in. "They have no psychic abilities, no ability to manipulate matter at the molecular level. Their fastest spacecraft would take them thousands of years to reach even their nearest star." A wave of psychic laughter swept through the chamber. Sound was not audible to human ears, but rather a shared emotional response that connected the minds of species, would evolve beyond the need for crude vocalizations. To them, humanity's technological level was equivalent to insects trying to build cities from twigs and leaves. The crystal form of Zephmirin, the eldest of the Zephyrian delegates, pulsed with rainbow colors as it spoke through harmonic vibrations. "Have they discovered the fundamental forces? Can they manipulate gravity or quantum states?" "Their understanding of physics is barely sufficient to split atoms," Vexstar replied. "They have theories about quantum mechanics, but no practical application beyond the most basic level. Cannot even manipulate their own genetic code effectively." The Kethfer commander gestured, and the hologram shifted to show Earth's solar system. The single yellow star burned steadily at its center, surrounded by 8 planets and countless smaller bodies. However, the system contains significant mineral resources. The star itself is perfect for harvesting, stable, middle-aged, with at least 4 billion years of usable energy remaining. This caught the attention of the assembled council. Advanced civilizations required enormous amounts of energy to maintain their technology and support their populations. Stars were the ultimate power source, and a healthy yellow dwarf like Earth's sun could power an entire sector of galactic civilization for millennia. "The Varanian Collective has already performed preliminary scans," announced Kalthex, her metallic voice resonating through the chamber. "The stellar composition is ideal for our harvesting technology. We estimate complete energy extraction could be accomplished within 2 standard galactic cycles. And the inhabitants?" asked Mordok of the hegemony, a species that resembled walking shadows with burning eyes. Vexstar waved dismissively with 2 of his forearms. 7 billion individuals, but they pose no threat whatsoever. Their most powerful weapons could not damage even our oldest spacecraft. If they prove cooperative, they can be relocated to a suitable reservation world. If not, he left the sentence unfinished, but the implication was clear. The vote proceeded with mechanical efficiency. Each species cast their decision through the neural link that connected all council members, their choices flowing through the shared consciousness that governed galactic civilization. The result was predictable and unanimous. Earth was classified as a negligible species. Under Galactic Code 7743b, its solar system was approved for resource extraction, with primary harvesting rights granted to the Kethper Empire and secondary rights to the Varanian Collective. The timeline was set. Complete stellar harvesting would begin within 18 standard months. As the council session concluded and representatives began departing for their homeworlds, none of them gave Earth another thought. They had catalogued thousands of primitive worlds, and this one seemed no different from any other backward civilization that would soon be swept aside by the march of galactic progress. They had no way of knowing that their casual dismissal of humanity would prove to be the greatest mistake in galactic history. The coffee in Dr. Kim Hyen's cup had gone cold hours ago, but he barely noticed. His eyes remained fixed on the computer screen, showing data that challenged everything he thought he knew about the universe. The Seoul Astronomical Observatory had been his second home for 15 years. But tonight, it felt like a completely alien place. 3 stars had died in the past 2 weeks. Not died in the way stars usually ended their lives through explosion or collapse, but simply stopped shining. One moment they burned bright across the galaxy, the next moment they were gone, leaving nothing but cold darkness where brilliant light had existed for billions of years. Kim Hye-on rubbed his tired eyes and checked the measurements again. The 3 star systems were all exactly 47 light-years from Earth. That could not be a coincidence. In a universe where everything followed patterns and laws, this kind of precision meant only one thing. Intelligence was behind the disappearances. Professor Kim. The voice of his research assistant echoed across the laboratory, breaking through his concentration. Park Min-ho was running between computer terminals, his usually neat appearance disheveled from working through the night. The Deep Space Monitoring Station in Australia just sent emergency data. Need to see this right now. Kim Hye-on walked quickly to where the young man stood, pointing at a display screen. The image showed energy readings unlike anything in their databases. Massive signatures were moving through space at impossible speeds, following straight lines that ignored the gravitational pulls of planets and stars. How big are these energy sources? Ian asked, though he already feared the answer. Each one is putting out more power than our entire sun, Park Min-ho replied, his voice barely above a whisper. And Professor, they're all heading toward our solar system. Based on their current speed, they'll reach the edge of our system in less than 3 days. Kim Hoon felt his stomach drop. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, and it was the worst possible scenario. Not only were they not alone, but something out there was powerful enough to extinguish stars and was heading directly toward Earth. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of emergency meetings and frantic phone calls. World leaders who had spent years arguing about trade deals and territory suddenly found themselves united by a threat that made their previous conflicts seem like children's games. Lee So-young, South Korea's Minister of Science and Technology, had barely slept since the crisis began. She stood in the emergency session room in Geneva, surrounded by presidents, prime ministers, and scientists from every major nation on Earth. The usual diplomatic protocols had been abandoned in favor of desperate speed. Dr. Kim, she said, gesturing for the astronomer to address the assembly. Please explain what we're facing. Kim Hye-on walked to the front of the room, carrying a tablet loaded with data that would change humanity's future forever. He connected it to the large display screen and began showing images that made several world leaders gasp audibly. Ladies and gentlemen, we are looking at technology that is thousands of years ahead of our own capabilities, he began, his voice steady despite the weight of what he had to say. These beings, whoever they are, can drain the energy from entire stars. They have already destroyed 3 solar systems, and all evidence suggests that our sun is their next target. The room fell silent except for the quiet hum of air conditioning systems. Kim Hain continued, knowing that sugarcoating the truth would help no one. Based on their current approach, pattern, and the time it took them to harvest the previous stars, we estimate they will begin the process of draining our sun within 6 months. Once they start, we will have perhaps weeks before Earth becomes uninhabitable. President Martinez of the Global Space Consortium leaned forward in her chair. What can we do? Do we have any weapons that could stop them? Kim Hain shook his head. Grimly, our most powerful nuclear weapons would be like throwing stones at a mountain.
Oh.
These beings can manipulate energy on a stellar scale. Our entire global power output for a year would be equivalent to what they consume in minutes. The weight of despair settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Some representatives began quietly discussing evacuation plans, though everyone knew there was nowhere to evacuate to. Earth's most advanced spacecraft could barely reach the outer planets of their own solar system, but Lee Soyoung had not reached her position by giving up when faced with impossible challenges. She stood up, commanding the attention of everyone. In the room, Dr. Kim, you said these beings are technologically superior to us by thousands of years, but that doesn't mean we're helpless. Throughout human history, we've survived by adapting and innovating when our backs were against the wall. What do we need to do? Kim Hyun looked around the room at the faces of world leaders who had just learned that their species might have only months left to live. But instead of defeat, he saw determination beginning to replace despair. We need to gather every brilliant mind on the planet, he said. Physicists, engineers, mathematicians, computer scientists. We need to understand how their technology works and find a weakness. It may seem impossible, but humans have always been best at solving problems when failure means extinction. Within hours, underground research facilities across 6 continents began receiving the greatest collection of scientific talent in human history. The clock was ticking, and humanity's survival depended on their ability to accomplish what seemed impossible, defeating an enemy whose technology was as far beyond theirs as a modern computer was beyond a stone tool. The fluorescent lights in the underground bunker hummed constantly, creating a sound that Dr. Choi Hejin had learned to ignore after 3 months of working 18-hour days. 200 meters beneath the Taebaek Mountains, surrounded by tons of rock and concrete, she felt safer than anywhere else on Earth. The alien ships had been monitoring human activities from the edge of the solar system, but they seemed uninterested in what happened deep underground. Choi Hee-jen stared at her computer screen, watching patterns of numbers that had been driving her crazy for weeks. The quantum physics data from the alien star harvesting operations made no sense, according to everything humans knew about science. The aliens were somehow reaching across vast distances of space and affecting the nuclear fusion happening deep inside stars. This should be impossible, she muttered to herself for the 100th time. Then she saw something that made her heart race. Hidden in the complex data were repeating patterns, mathematical sequences that looked almost familiar. She grabbed her secure phone and called Dr. Kim Hyun at the main coordination center in Seoul. The call connected through encrypted channels that bounced signals off 12 different satellites to avoid alien detection. Professor Kim, I think I found something, she said, trying to keep the excitement out of her voice. The aliens aren't just using raw power to destroy stars. They're using quantum resonance frequencies that follow specific mathematical patterns. There was silence on the other end of the line for several seconds. Kim Hyun had been coordinating research teams around the world, and most of the news he received was disappointing. Finding weaknesses in technology that was thousands of years ahead of humanity seemed hopeless. Explain it to me like I'm not a quantum physicist, he said finally. Choi Hejin looked at her data and tried to find simple words for incredibly complex concepts. Imagine a star is like a huge musical instrument. The aliens have found the exact frequencies that make the star's fusion process become unstable. But they're not just hitting random notes. They're playing a very specific song. And that song follows patterns we can predict. Meanwhile, in another underground facility beneath the city of Daijin, Dr. Yang Taiman was working on a different piece of the puzzle. He had been studying the alien technology for months, was trying to understand how beings could manipulate matter and energy on such a massive scale. What he discovered surprised him. The alien technology was incredibly advanced, but it was also incredibly rigid. Every process followed exact logical steps, like a computer program that could only work one specific way. There was no room for creativity or unexpected solutions. Like they've become too smart, he explained to his research team during their daily video conference with other facilities. Their thinking is so logical and mathematical that they can't imagine solutions that don't follow perfect patterns. Dr. Park Sun-mi, a mathematician who had been working with Yang Taemin's team, understood immediately what this meant. She had spent her career studying chaos theory and the mathematics of unpredictable systems. Humans excelled at finding solutions that seemed random but actually worked perfectly. "We think differently than they do," she said during a late-night conference call, connecting all the major research facilities. "Our brains make intuitive jumps. We can see solutions that pure logic would never find." The three scientists began working together, sharing data across the encrypted network that connected research facilities on every continent. Choi Hee-jin provided the quantum resonance patterns she had discovered. Young Taemin contributed his analysis of how the alien technology operated. Park Sun-mi developed mathematical frameworks that combined logical analysis with human creativity. What they found seemed impossible at first. The alien star harvesting network created quantum entanglement connections across hundreds of light years of space. These connections were incredibly strong and followed rigid mathematical rules. But those same rules could be turned against the aliens if humans could generate the right counterfrequencies. "Think of it like this," Choi Hee-jin explained during a presentation to the Global Crisis Committee. "The aliens have built a huge network that connects all the stars they want to harvest. That network is their greatest strength, but it could also be their greatest weakness. If we can send the right quantum frequencies through their own system, we might be able to affect every star they've ever touched." The mathematics required to calculate these counterfrequencies were incredibly complex. Human computers had to run continuously for weeks, processing equations that filled thousands of pages. But slowly, a solution began to emerge. The aliens had created their network assuming that no primitive species could understand quantum mechanics well enough to interfere with their operations. They never considered that humans might approach the problem from completely different angles. Using intuition and creativity, along with scientific knowledge, Dr. Yang Taemin ran the final calculations on a supercomputer buried beneath the Swiss Alps. The results showed that humanity could potentially turn the aliens' own harvesting network into a weapon that would affect every star system connected to it. "You can't build weapons powerful enough to fight their spaceships," he said during the final presentation to world leaders. "But we don't need to fight their spaceships. We can turn their own technology against them and make every star in their network become unstable." For the first time in months, the faces around the conference table showed hope instead of despair. Humanity had found a way to fight back, using nothing but mathematics, creativity, and the one advantage they had always possessed, the ability to find solutions that no logical mind would ever consider. The aliens thought humans were too primitive to understand advanced science. They were about to learn that sometimes being underestimated was the greatest advantage of all. The massive alien harvesting ship hung in space like a dark mountain, positioned between Earth and its sun. Commander Vexstar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his crew prepare for what should have been a routine operation. They had drained the energy from hundreds of stars across the galaxy, and this small yellow sun would be no different from any other. Dr. Kim Hae-on sat in the Global Command Center buried deep beneath the mountains of Switzerland, his hand hovering over a single red button. Round him, representatives from every nation on Earth watched screens showing the alien fleet beginning their harvesting procedure. The moment they had prepared for during 6 months of desperate work had finally arrived. "Quantum resonance generators report ready," announced Dr. Choi Hee-jin from her station. Hidden throughout Earth's solar system, disguised as space debris and asteroid mining equipment, dozens of devices waited for the signal. Each generator contained years of human scientific advancement compressed into technology that barely anyone understood completely. The alien harvesting beams struck Earth's sun first, sending ripples of energy that the Kethver equipment began converting into usable power. For a few seconds, everything proceeded exactly as Commander Vextar expected. Then Dr. Kim Han pressed the button. The quantum resonance generators activated simultaneously across the solar system. Instead of fighting against the alien harvesting beam, they joined with it, adding their own frequencies to the energy flow. But these were not the rigid, logical patterns that alien technology expected. They were chaotic, creative, unpredictable. Sequences that human minds had designed using intuition as much as mathematics. Commander Vextar watched his control panels with growing confusion. The harvesting operation was proceeding normally, but strange readings were appearing throughout his ship's systems. Energy patterns that made no sense were flowing through the quantum entanglement network that connected his fleet to every other Kethver operation across the galaxy. "Navigation officer, are you detecting interference with our harvesting beam?" he asked, his forearms gesturing at displays showing impossible data. "Commander, the harvesting is successful, but we are receiving quantum resonance patterns that do not match any known technology," replied the officer, her crystalline voice filled with uncertainty. "The patterns appear to be random, yet they are propagating through our entire network." 3,000 light-years away on the Kethver homeworld, the first signs of disaster began appearing. The planet's 3 suns, which had been connected to the harvesting network for over 1,000 years, started showing instabilities that their scientists had never seen before. Solar flares erupted from their surfaces in patterns that defied every law of stellar physics. Dr. Yang monitored the spreading effect from his underground facility on Earth, watching computer displays that showed quantum entanglement pathways lighting up across the galaxy. The alien network that had been designed to efficiently harvest stellar energy was now carrying humanity's counter-frequencies to every star system the Kethver had ever touched. "The resonance is propagating faster than we calculated," he reported. "To the Global Command Center, it's following quantum pathways we didn't even know existed. Every star in their network is being affected simultaneously." On the Varanian homeworld, a planet that orbited 2 stars locked in an ancient gravitational dance, alarms began sounding in crystal cities that had stood for millions of years. The binary stars that had provided stable energy for longer than human civilization existed suddenly began pulsing irregularly. Their light dimmed and brightened in chaotic patterns that sent waves of panic through a population that had never experienced stellar instability. The Zephyrian crystal beings, whose entire society was built around perfect mathematical harmony, found their world facing something their logical minds could not process. Their sun, a red giant that had been carefully regulated by Zephyrian technology for eons, began losing 20% of its energy output in a single day. For creatures whose bodies were made of living crystal, powered by solar energy, this was equivalent to slowly suffocating. Commander Vextar finally understood what was happening when reports began flooding in from across the Kethver Empire. Every star connected to their harvesting network was experiencing quantum instabilities. Stars that had burned steadily for billions of years were suddenly dying. Not from natural causes, but from mathematical frequencies that his species could not understand or control. "Shut down the harvesting operation immediately," he commanded, but his crew reported that the quantum entanglement connections could not be severed. Once established, the pathways continued carrying the strange human frequencies, whether the harvesting equipment was active or not, Dr. Park. Sami watched the mathematical models updating in real time from her computer station. The chaos theory equations she had helped develop were working exactly as predicted, but even she was surprised by how effectively the human counter-frequencies were spreading through the alien network. "It's like a virus," she explained to the other scientists. "Their technology is so perfectly logical that it has no defense against patterns that don't follow strict mathematical rules. Our frequencies are spreading through their entire network because their systems cannot adapt to unexpected inputs across 12 different star systems. Advanced civilizations that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years watched their suns begin to die. The Kethver Empire, the Varanian Collective, the Zephyrian Crystal Cities. and 9 other species found themselves facing extinction because they had underestimated a primitive world whose greatest strength was thinking in ways that pure logic could never predict. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations were learning that sometimes the most sophisticated technology becomes the greatest weakness when facing an enemy who refuses to think the way you expect them to. The alien ship that descended toward Earth looked nothing like the massive warships that had appeared 6 months earlier. This vessel was smaller, damaged, and broadcasting emergency signals on every frequency humans had ever used for communication. As it entered Earth's atmosphere, radio operators around the world heard the same message repeated in 17 different languages. We request immediate audience with Earth leadership. Our civilizations are dying. Commander Vexstar stepped out of his ship at the landing site in Geneva, Switzerland. The same alien who had once dismissed humanity as primitive insects now walked with the slow, careful movements of someone who had seen his entire worldview collapse. His forearms hung at his sides, and his proud military bearing had been replaced by something humans recognized immediately: desperation. The United Nations Assembly Hall had been hastily modified to accommodate alien physiology. Special chairs had been built for beings who did not have human-shaped bodies, and translation equipment filled the room with a constant low hum. World leaders sat in their usual seats, but the dynamic had changed completely. For the first time in galactic history, aliens were coming to humans for help. Commander Vexstar stood at the speaking podium, his translator converting his words into every human language. The same voice that had once declared humanity negligible now carried tones of defeat and fear. "Leaders of Earth," he began, pausing as if the words were difficult to speak. "I am Commander Vexstar of the Kethfer Empire. 6 months ago, I stood before the Galactic Council and recommended your species for elimination. I told my colleagues that you possessed no significant abilities and posed no threat to galactic civilization." A murmur went through the assembly hall. Many of the world leaders remembered watching recordings of that Galactic Council session, when Earth's fate had been decided by beings who considered humans less important than insects. "I was wrong," Vexstar continued, his 4 eyes focusing on the human delegates. "The quantum resonance weapon your species created has spread through our harvesting network to 47 star systems. Our most advanced scientists cannot understand how your technology works, and we cannot stop it. Billions of lives across 12 civilizations hang in the balance." Dr. Kim Hain rose from his seat in the scientific advisory section. The astronomer, who had first detected the alien threat, now found himself speaking for humanity in negotiations that would reshape the galaxy. Behind him sat the other members of his team: Dr. Choi Hijin, who had discovered the quantum resonance patterns; Dr. Yang Taemin, who had analyzed alien technology; and Dr. Park Sunmi, whose mathematical creativity had made everything possible. "Commander Vexstar," Dr. Kim Hyen said, his voice calm and measured. "You speak of billions of lives, but 6 months ago, your people planned to eliminate 7 billion humans to harvest our sun. Why should we save civilizations that showed us no mercy?" The alien commander's translator struggled with the emotional undertones in his response because because we were wrong about everything. We believed that technological advancement was the only measure of a species' worth. We thought that superior weapons and energy manipulation made us superior beings. Your species has shown us that intelligence and creativity are more powerful than any technology. Lee So-young, who had coordinated Earth's scientific response throughout the crisis, stood to address the assembly. As South Korea's Minister of Science and Technology, she had become one of the primary human voices in the negotiations. "We can stop the quantum resonance," she announced, causing a visible wave of relief to pass through the alien delegation. "Our scientists understand how the frequencies work, and we can modify them to stabilize your stars instead of destabilizing them, but we will not do this to return to the old galactic order." The terms that humanity presented were simple but revolutionary. The Galactic Council, which had existed for thousands of years with Earth having no voice, would be dissolved completely. In its place, a new galactic confederation would be formed with Earth as a founding member with equal status to any other species. More importantly, all future decisions about the fate of newly discovered civilizations would require unanimous consent from all Confederation members. Never again would a species be classified as negligible and marked for elimination by beings who considered themselves superior. The quantum resonance technology would remain under human control, but its benefits would be shared with all Confederation members. The same principles that had turned stars into weapons could also be used to stabilize dying stars and provide clean energy across the galaxy. The negotiations took 3 weeks, with representatives from all 12 affected civilizations traveling to Earth to participate. For beings who had ruled the galaxy for millennia, accepting humans as equals required a fundamental change in thinking. But with their stars dying and their populations facing extinction, they had no choice but to adapt. 6 months after the Galactic Confederation was established, Lee So-young stood in the new headquarters building in Geneva, watching construction crews work on the first joint research facilities. Humans and aliens worked side by side, sharing knowledge and technology in ways that would benefit everyone through the large windows. She could see the night sky where stars burned bright and steady once again. The quantum resonance had been modified to stabilize stellar fusion rather than destroy it, giving dying civilizations new hope for the future. The species that had once thought Earth was powerless now understood that true strength came not from advanced weapons or superior technology, but from the ability to imagine solutions that others could never conceive. Humanity's greatest victory was not conquering the galaxy, but teaching it that cooperation was more powerful than domination.